Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. We have with us today meteorologist Greg Soulje. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, as always, Sarah. Hope you're doing well, and everyone else out there on a relatively acceptable day's worth of weather across the Corn Belt. And some folks making some progress, others watered out, others dealing with severe stuff. So the beat goes on, as we have been talking about on these get-togethers over the past few months.
I was talking to a farmer yesterday, actually, in eastern Iowa, and he's got his 1,000 acres in. He got it in 7 days with a 12 row. He was quite proud of that. And
good for him.
And he said that, I said, well, you're supposed to get it in that window. Greg Soulje has been talking about it. And he said, that's what I've been hearing. I hear Greg's message and I saw the window and I got in and I got those crops in the ground. So that, see, they're listening a little bit out there, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. Your back 40 land and history to it better than I do. We can tell you the weather. You make the decision to go on out there. But like I said, sometimes character building, planting windows will be small, sometimes gone for a couple of weeks at a time. So yeah, if you're able to get out there, and we're seeing some decent numbers into the Western Corn Belt areas where the big rains and severe have been absent. They played out into the Missouri Valley and points south from there. But everyone's into this at least warmer weather pattern, but it's still a wet and active one here going forward. And we'll talk about it here over the next few minutes.
All right, let's add those slides in here then.
Here we go. On this, I believe it is Earth Day on this 22nd day of April. So farmers, the first environmentalists who have always been taking care of the planet. That's the way I've learned it and understood it. So kudos to you folks for continuing to do a fantastic job out there. And across the Corn Belt, the headlines continue to be still running the furnace of the boiler into some parts of the northern and eastern Corn Belt with chilly weather there. But again, there's been some fieldwork progress. It's been primarily northern Missouri, Iowa, probably the far eastern areas of Nebraska and away from any of the areas that were subject to severe weather or excessive downpours or anything like that. So there are small pockets, and that's about the way we're going to go here, I think, regarding planting operations in the Corn Belt. Made mention to Mike Pearson last week as we were getting the show together. So, every year we tend to redefine variability across the Corn Belt. I think it's going to be just another one of those years with haves versus have-nots and good, bad, and ugly and everything in between going forward. So, again, some progress in the Western Corn Belt areas, and we're getting some longer-term warmth. Actually, the folks at and I should have put a slide in there about it, the folks at the Illinois State Water Survey are saying, at least across Illinois, temperatures are averaging in the mid and upper 50s over some central and southern areas. So we're kind of getting close to the right temperature, at least. It's just finding the right opportunity and time to get out there with planting operations. And it's been really areas from the Missouri River on southward where they were clocked, not the big rains that we had back in mid-April, those double-digit totals, but there were 3 to 6 in some spots, a little more than 8 inches that came down. So in some areas, half what we had in April, but it was just enough, and just a bit of rain got the rivers going. So there's some flood issues in the mid-Missouri Valley, back into eastern Oklahoma, Ada, Oklahoma, south of Oklahoma City getting clocked last weekend, parts of Arkansas and Missouri, as mentioned. And the rivers continue to run and crest down through the lower Mississippi Valley. If you go east of there into eastern Mississippi, more so Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, very good progress has been made out there. Adequate soil, except for the eastern parts of the Carolinas and Georgia, and of course warmth, and there is heat coming into that part of the country as well. Despite the recent rains, if you were going to pencil a line from North Platte to Wichita to Oklahoma City along and east of that line, except for Nebraska, it's been too much, but about right in through eastern Nebraska. You go west into the Panhandle, southwestern reaches, about the western half of Kansas and Oklahoma. Still some issues, 34, 40, 41, 42% of that winter wheat crop continues to be in dire straits already. But everyone else in relatively decent order, but the movement north of severe weather is on the increase here, not only later this week, over the next 24 to 36 hours, but next week as well. So a lot of the stuff which has been playing out into the southern plains, the southern Corn Belt, Ohio Valley, is going to lift northward more to the heart of cattle country and the west central and central Corn Belt to locales and points onto the east. So heads up on that. But at least in the shorter term, for the day today and through this evening. Again, Kansas, Oklahoma, western Texas, sometimes in those West Texas areas, Dalhart, Amarillo, down to east of El Paso, the Rio Grande. It's a lot of hail that tends to, and big hail at that, as dry air kind of gets entrained to these thunderstorms over the southern plains off of and out of Colorado and at New Mexico. So heads up there. A couple of stronger storms may work into parts of Iowa. And the Carolinas had a couple of stronger storms, roughly the Black Hills to about areas northwest of the Corn Palace and into the southern sections of Nebraska yesterday. A fair amount of those had some gusty winds with them, but no widespread damage. In any event, southern states, there is the rapid pace at planting operations ahead of the 5-year average. You take a couple of them, as in 48% seeded in through rice, and 11% for cotton and 3% for peanuts. So in relatively good shape down in that particular part of the country. The dryness and drought has eased in the Carolinas. Too wet as you get into the mid-south and parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. So like we've been talking about, if you're in between, as we have applied it to the Midwest, same as applying to parts of the deep south and more so southeastern states over the past couple of weeks. And across the western states, the 90-degree heat is into the desert southwest, and keeping an eye on the Pacific Northwest. Sometimes we get into these clear, calm, cold nights. It's just enough to maybe put a little cold air and a patch of frost into parts of the Pacific Northwest where fruit operations are underway. Otherwise, this is late last week's drought monitor. We'll continue to peddle this thing because you can see the marked improvement over the eastern and southern Corn Belt. There'll be probably further categorical improvement on Thursday's drought monitor out of central and southern Missouri, eastern Kansas, and Oklahoma. But quite a line again from Wichita to Oklahoma City to Dallas-Fort Worth, west of there, issues. Same as the Rio Grande and parts of the southwestern United States. And there's at least hope, I think, going forward. And we may make some additional drought improvement into Montana and the Dakotas going forward. So I think I wouldn't be surprised that there's many to most locales that go into the heart or a delayed planting season mode where soil moisture has been recharged or maybe above average, top to bottom, obviously leading into some field work and planting delays, but we may go into late spring and early summer. That's it, just that time frame where we are in great shape and much improved soil moisture conditions, especially, let's say, roughly the Missouri River to slightly west of there, and then east even in better shape. But again, worsening, as we had talked about last week on the half-hour live stream and last weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness, the summer outlook, which has that D word. It's starting a little farther west by our estimate, but there will be a slow creep eastward with time and a narrow corridor where folks were going to get it right with just amount of rain, correct or late planting, and then the heat comes in and maybe some timely early season tasseling stage type rain, if you will, and pod setting rain. And then you go east of there, it's too much of a good thing. You go west, not enough of a good thing. But we'll cover that in further detail and updated as the weeks go on. There is the next weather system weakening and stalling out across the plains from Iowa through Kansas, a warm front through the northern end of Illinois. Up here in the northern end of the state, already a couple of showers, but they're weakening and breaking up there back into parts of Wisconsin, north of the Kickapoo. Some flooding going on there from last weekend's rain and recent snowmelts. And some, again, good, decent rain and a little farther east of what they saw back in mid-April. So some of these rains are much needed and appreciated as they apply to the Carolinas. They'll be moving out late this afternoon and evening time, and weather stays relatively quiet across a good part of the heartland, only to see the next frontal system work on in, another developing warm front. And by tomorrow morning, we're due it again with at least a scattering of showers over parts of the western Corn Belt, northern reaches of Illinois. Probably not enough to completely stop field work if you've been even keeled in the field work planning operation standpoint. Northern Missouri and Iowa and eastern Nebraska, that area of red through West Texas, that is severe weather potential, and the scattered showers and thunderstorms continue in the southeast. By tomorrow, late afternoon, evening time, the rains begin to pick up, this time a little farther west. Maybe west of Wichita to the Colorado line, and north from there, there may be some drought easing moisture, and we're back into maybe field work delay mode for parts of the western and northern Corn Belt locales. And look at that moisture plume for Thursday. Some relatively good news. Yes, field work delays, but pasture lands, ranching operations, cattle operations, this is good news. Haying operations in mind to get some significant, decent, almost late winter, early spring moisture, and it's not in the form of snow nor any real cold air. So some good news on the plains. Not great maybe with planting operations, but great for the livestock operations with the pasture lands, range lands, alfalfa, everything that you need. And none of this is expected to be terribly severe either. So some of these may come down in kind of soaking category. So going forward here, the next 5 days, there's the Friday upper air. You can see another low dropping into the Pacific Northwest, Northern California. Typically, these things don't make much of a dent in the moisture department in the Southwest and through California. The air just starts off too dry. But as they move into areas east of the divide, there's that Sunday to Monday buckle and into the plains. This is going to be a slow moving weather system, probably each and every day next week, starting Monday in the plains and western Corn Belt. Eastern sections come Tuesday, then Wednesday, then Thursday, and probably finally ending Friday in the western belt in the plains, and next weekend in the eastern Corn Belt, and point southward into the lower Mississippi Valley and southern plains. This last panel on Tuesday represents daily outbreaks of these 40 to 60 or 50 to 70% coverage showers and thunderstorms. So on any given day, maybe you have chances to get out there. There'll be some areas that may have a couple of days worth of rain in the same areas. And when these things come through, they will tend to be in the afternoon thunderstorms at evening, outbreaks of thunderstorm activity. Same with the overnight hours. And then these things kind of wind down. But a warmer, more humid weather pattern for the plains and Corn Belt locales. Dew points up, keep an eye on the bin and barn walls, but putting additional warmth into the soils, but again, putting more moisture back in the soils where we don't need any more. And in other areas of the Midwest, we'll take the moisture. And in other areas, that's going to lead to some field work delays. And there is the map between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. One system moving through the Corn Belt, through the Ohio Valley, Friday to Saturday. There's another feature developing west of the Missouri. When you get those east-southeasterly winds out of the Corn Belt locales, and then those winds out of the Gulf come up from the south. That's what we've talked about the past few times. These convergent zones, the air collides over a boundary. You get a little jet stream segment that comes along it, or an upper pattern. That's how you get these batches, blobs, waves of showers and thunderstorms to get going. So they're back in the plains Sunday. Western Corn Belt probably no later than Monday. Eastern sections later Monday, Tuesday. And this is going to be a slow-moving, windy, warmer weather pattern. But each day, showers and thunderstorms in the forecast for the plains and Corn Belt locales. Hence, pick your spots. Don't wait for me to tell you. When you know it's time to go and you can get it going and stop, do it. Not every day will be perfect. Some days will be pretty miserable. You may muddle along is another phrase we use in the private weather sector. So service. And so you just got to go out there and do it when you can. And you may have to deal with some compaction issues. It may not be the greatest setup. May have to go out there again and do it again. That's the way the spring is looking into the Corn Belt locales in particular, especially eastern section. So that said, showery weather is a story, central and eastern plains the rest of this week. Might as well just rubber stamp it for next week. And there'll be recurring severe weather outbreaks as well going forward. Again, more of those up to north of I-70, I-80 corridor, maybe as far north as the Twins to Green Bay, and likely as far south as about I-70, but then back north of there. So in that main heart meat potatoes areas of the Central Plains and Corn Belt locales, probably recurring severe weather there as well. The next 5 days, another 1 to 3 inches. Central and Southern Plains don't need any more in some of those Southern Plain areas. Don't need any more in through Missouri and the far Southern Corn Belt areas with streams and rivers still in flood warning stature south of I-70 to Southern Illinois. So the same areas get more rain, and there's kind of the 3-day outlook of rain that is the 24th to the 26th on the southern high plains, West Texas, New Mexico. Flash flood potential there. More rain for the waterlogged areas. You can see these little hatched purple areas. We're already in flood warning stature there. So there's additional heavy rain along about the 24th to 25th. And then the 24th to the 25th will translate and start that in the Ohio Valley, the I-70 corridor to start. And then you can just take those 3 circles and probably propagate them north across Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, much of the central Corn Belt locales and southern Great Lakes region for next week. So probably 1 to 3 next week in the heart of the Corn Belt. So again, the next 7 days, it's great news and not a lot of spring planting going on in the Dakotas, obviously, or big sky country. We didn't have any significant or really no flooding at all in the usual flood areas of the Red River Valley of the northward into Canada. And so there are still some areas of dryness and drought there too. So this is kind of welcome news before we really get things going and a cranking into the northern plains and uppermost Midwest. Still, it's early in the season for even corn and soybean operations generally. some folks get out there, I'm sure, to beat the calendar, but across Minnesota and Wisconsin. But again, some of the same hard-hit areas get it, and a little farther north, and a more manageable setup of rain in the short term over the eastern Corn Belt locales. But this is the next 7 days. It could easily be the next 2 weeks with that deeper shade of purple and red propagating a little farther east into the Corn Belt locales. No endorsement per usual, but it just, for conversational purposes, fits the bill correctly. We'd like to see this a little farther east as we get into the beginning part of May, but the 6 to 10 day outlook from the feds. Good news for some, not great news for others, depending on how you've played out the moisture season so far. And so there it is for the Corn Belt and the Plain States. And this is a little drier than we'd like to see. And we'd like to see maybe more significant rains, at least from our vantage point and our thoughts, into the southern and eastern Corn Belt locales again into the first full week of the month of May. So some general agreement, details, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but the right idea, a wet pattern for much of the Plain States areas. If you want to go forward here, as we talked about on the last broadcast, this is if you want to go out through the first 10 days of May, wet pattern will continue on. There's no real sustainable breakdown on this wetter scenario. And we talked about it last weekend's edition of the show, and we'll have the outlook through the 25th of May for just about the Memorial Day weekend on this weekend's edition. It's probably not until late May, beginning part of June, west to east, and pretty quickly when we get into a drier, more significant spell of drier weather. But that is going to be the vanguard, the start to this drought that will return, but Plains and Western Corn Belt, Intermountain West, before it works out of the east. This is 85 to 90 degree air for the beginning part of May. As far north as northern Missouri and a good part of the Corn Belt. So we're going to put warmth into the soils, and the warmer pattern generally continues on. We can make some debate about this, but the general right idea that there's no real cold air left to deal with for now, and the warmth continues on into much of the heartland going forward into the first week of May. So warmer, wetter, milder windows of opportunity, not all day rains, these late night, early morning, late afternoon, early evening pop-up things, scattered stuff, and then the more significant waves on the overnight to pre-dawn hours. It's that story that plays out here from southwest to northeast into the southern plains and the heart of the Corn Belt. Again, we get deeper into summertime, they'll begin to come in northwest to southeast, riding the ridge, and hence the ridges across the plains and western Corn Belt, hence the dryness and drought gets going there first, and then in the eastern sections when we may need it in the mid to late summer and early autumn. So that's everything I've got to say in the weather office today, Sarah. Anything you have there?
No, very good. Just watch that weather and get out in those fields when you can. It sounds like you're going to have some windows, but you need to take advantage of those.
Yeah, that guy in Iowa looks like a genius, so take his lead.
He was quite proud. He said it's the best conditions he's had, and he was already out there. Like he said, like a week later, so he's already got 2-inch roots and his little sprout coming up, and he's
those trial lines.
He's happy. I'm like, I hope you don't have to replant. I hope it doesn't get to that at some point.
That can happen in one weekend time frame. Yeah, you get the soil moisture back where you need to be. Then these systems, storms train out like a railroad freight car, one after another one. It never ends. And so that's what we have to watch out for. That's kind of the feel like we've had already in the southwestern Corn Belt, southern Corn Belt, and southern plains. So it's that set up until we can get things to come in from the north and northwest, but we're still probably 6 weeks out from beginning that process over the middle part of the country. So like I said, you got the window, the warmth is coming. That should help with some general drying and firming, offset by the rains. But when you think it's time and ready to go get it. But again, it will be a character building planning season.
And we'll have Greg back with us on Friday to give us another update on how the weekend and early next week are going to look. And of course, this week on in agribusiness on RFD and under 120 affiliated stations this weekend. That's another place that you can catch him and all of his weather information. So thank you so much, Greg. Happy Earth Day. And
right to you as well. Yes.
We'll see you a little later this week.
All right. Take care.